Before you scroll, pause for a second. This is not just another message passing through your screen. There is a reason this landed in front of you now, in this exact mood, in this exact moment, while that one person is still living somewhere in the back of your mind. You may have tried to ignore it. You may have told yourself it does not matter anymore. But some part of you still feels the weight of their silence, still wonders what was real, still replays what was said, what was not said, and what all of it meant. And here is the truth you need to hear right now. Silence does not always mean the story is over. Sometimes silence is where the deepest emotions hide. Sometimes what looks empty on the outside is full on the inside. Stay with me, because what you are about to hear may change the way you see their distance, their absence, and even your own pain. And if this touches something deep in you, then do not brush it away too fast, because the next few minutes may explain more than you expected. If this message has reached you now, it may be because something inside you has been searching for clarity for longer than you want to admit. Maybe not with words, maybe not even consciously, but deep down, your mind, your emotions, and that quiet inner part of you have been trying to understand why this connection still lingers. Why this person still crosses your thoughts. Why their silence feels heavier than silence should feel. You did not just randomly end up here. Something in you has been asking for understanding, and this may be the moment that understanding starts to open. The person you keep thinking about, the one whose distance still echoes in your chest, is not just attached to memory. They are attached to unfinished meaning. And unfinished meaning is powerful. It does not leave easily. It keeps returning in quiet moments, late nights, early mornings, and strange pauses in the middle of normal days. You may have been trying to act fine. Maybe you have kept going, smiling, working, talking, living. But inside, there has still been a question. Why did it feel so deep if it could become so quiet? Why did something that felt alive suddenly become hard to reach? And why does your mind keep circling back as if something in the story is still not complete? What you are feeling from their silence may not be as simple as your fear has been telling you. Your hurt may have tried to give it one sharp meaning: rejection, indifference, forgetting, moving on. But human emotions are rarely that neat. People do not always go silent because they feel nothing. Sometimes they go silent because they feel too much and do not know what to do with it. Sometimes a connection touches parts of them they were not ready to face. Sometimes emotions rise faster than their ability to process them. And when that happens, distance can become their way of trying to calm the storm inside. That does not automatically make their silence fair. It does not erase your pain. But it does mean the story may be more layered than the one your anxious thoughts have repeated. There are emotional states where words stop working, where feelings become too mixed, too heavy, too confusing to explain clearly. In those moments, some people do not move closer. They step back. Not because the connection meant nothing, but because it meant more than they knew how to hold. That is why what looks like coldness from the outside can sometimes be inner overwhelm on the inside. Do not skip this part, because this changes everything. Their silence may not be proof that you imagined the depth. It may be proof that the depth created pressure neither of you could fully control. Many people carry hidden emotional limits shaped by old pain, past disappointment, fear of loss, fear of vulnerability, and habits they built long before they met you. So when a real connection appears, especially one that feels intense, honest, and hard to label, it can shake something inside them. One part of them may feel pulled toward it. Another part may panic. One part may recognize something meaningful. Another part may want to run before that meaning asks too much of them. This inner split is more common than most people realize. A person can care and still withdraw. They can feel deeply and still avoid contact. They can miss you and still stay silent. Not because they are clear, but because they are not. Not because they are settled, but because they are unsettled. You may have seen only the distance, but distance is not always the whole picture. Sometimes distance is just what confusion looks like from the outside. And while you are trying to decode their behavior, they may have been trying to decode themselves. This is why silence can become so misleading. It looks final. It feels final. But often it is just a pause filled with unspoken processing, private conflict, and emotions that have not yet found a clean shape. And when the shape is missing, the mind fills the gap. Yours has probably been doing that for weeks, maybe months, turning uncertainty into painful conclusions because pain feels easier to define than ambiguity. But not every unanswered space should be filled with fear. Sometimes a gap exists because something is still unfolding, not because it is already dead. That matters, because once fear becomes the narrator, it starts rewriting everything. It tells you that you were not enough, that they forgot quickly, that you cared more, that the whole thing only mattered to you. And those thoughts can feel convincing when no one is there to challenge them. But convincing is not the same as true. In emotionally unclear situations, the mind often creates stories to protect itself. It would rather settle on a painful answer than sit inside uncertainty with no answer at all. Yet human connection does not always move in straight lines. It circles, it pauses, it hides, it returns in memory before it returns in action. It stays active inside people long after the visible contact has stopped. And if you have been feeling that strange sense that something is not fully over, that may not be fantasy. It may simply be your system recognizing that emotional meaning does not disappear the moment communication ends. Watch closely here because this part goes deeper. Some connections do not leave because they touched a surface layer. They stay because they reached somewhere private, somewhere unguarded, somewhere real. And when that happens, both people are changed, even if neither knows how to speak about it in the moment. Sometimes meeting someone does more than create attraction. Sometimes it acts like a mirror. It reflects back pieces of ourselves we have ignored, buried, or never properly understood. That kind of experience can feel magnetic and uncomfortable at the same time. One moment it feels warm, natural, alive. The next moment it feels threatening, simply because it asks for honesty people are not used to giving. When another person awakens hidden feelings, old wounds, unmet needs, or unspoken desires, the reaction is not always calm. It can be beautiful, but it can also be destabilizing. A person may not even realize that what they are reacting to is not only you, but what your presence brought up inside them. This is why some people seem deeply affected and then suddenly distant. They are not only dealing with a bond, they are dealing with what that bond revealed. And what gets revealed is not always easy. It may expose loneliness, it may expose fear, it may expose longing, it may expose the painful truth that they want closeness but do not trust it. So yes, your presence may have meant more than you were shown. Your energy, your honesty, your way of being may have activated recognition in them they could not quickly explain. And recognition is powerful. It leaves a mark. It creates a trace in memory. It returns later in quiet rooms and unguarded thoughts. That is why someone can look fine on the outside and still be carrying your impact privately, silently, and more often than you know. There are moments when thoughts of you may return to them without warning, not in some dramatic movie scene, in ordinary life, while driving, while lying awake longer than expected, while staring at nothing for a few extra seconds after a long day, while hearing a phrase, seeing a place, passing a time of day that carries your feeling back into the room. Memory works like that. Emotion works like that. What leaves a deep impression does not need permission to return. It just appears. And when it appears, it can create an invisible conversation inside them. Things they would say if they knew how. Things they almost text. Things they imagine but never send. Whole moments can happen internally without any outward action. That is one of the hardest truths to accept. Just because something is not expressed does not mean it is not happening. A person can rehearse reaching out in their mind and still never touch the phone. They can miss you privately and still remain silent publicly. They can feel the pull and still resist it. Why? Because feeling something is one thing. Being ready to act on it is something else. Readiness is shaped by fear, pride, timing, maturity, wounds, and whether someone has enough inner stability to face what a real reconnection would demand. So if you have been measuring the meaning of this bond only by visible action, you may be missing part of the truth. A lot of emotional life happens where no one else can see it. And then there is your side of this. The way your mind keeps picking up reminders, numbers, places, songs, fragments, strange patterns that seem to point back to them when you are trying not to think about them at all. It can feel almost unreal when this happens repeatedly, as if something outside you is trying to say their name without words. But often, what is happening is that your mind has become highly sensitive to anything connected to unresolved emotion. When something matters deeply and lacks closure, the brain starts scanning the world differently. It notices patterns faster. It links meaning more quickly. It pays attention to anything that feels emotionally related. That does not make your experience fake. It makes it human. Your system is trying to organize what still feels open. It is trying to create structure around uncertainty. And that is why reminders can feel so sharp. They land where the wound is still awake. They hit where the heart is still listening. This is also why overthinking becomes so easy. The mind wants a final answer. It wants to settle the story. It wants to know whether to hope, release, wait, or walk away. But forcing certainty too early often creates more pain, not less. Because if the truth is still unfolding, then pressure will not reveal it faster. Pressure only makes you spiral harder, and that spiral can make silence look louder than it really is. Even when nothing is happening on the surface, change can still be happening underneath. People go through private emotional shifts all the time. Slowly, quietly, almost invisibly. They question what they felt. They revisit old moments. They compare what they have now with what they experienced before. They realize certain interactions stayed with them longer than expected. They start understanding things late, very late sometimes. From the outside, this can look like nothing. But inwardly, it can be a long process of sorting, resisting, returning, and slowly recognizing what a connection actually meant. And when inner understanding finally catches up, outer behavior can change in ways that seem sudden. A message appears, a call happens, a chance meeting becomes charged with emotion. But what looks sudden on the outside is usually the result of many silent days and nights on the inside. This is why it is dangerous to assume that no movement means no feeling. A lot of important emotional movement happens in total privacy. And still, this is important, you cannot build your peace on guessing what they may or may not be processing. Hear that clearly. Their inner world may be active, but your healing cannot depend on access to it. You are not meant to spend your life reading shadows, decoding pauses, and measuring silence like it is a language you must master to survive. There comes a point where your strength has to grow larger than your need to know every hidden detail. Because no matter what they feel, your life cannot stay frozen inside a question. This connection may have been real. It may still be alive in ways neither of you fully sees. It may have changed them. It may have changed you. But your power returns the moment you stop making your worth depend on what they do next. That is the shift. That is the deeper lesson hidden inside all of this. You are allowed to recognize the depth without surrendering your stability to it. You are allowed to admit that they mattered without turning your future into a waiting room. You are allowed to feel the ache, the mystery, the tenderness, the unfinished energy, and still choose to stand firmly in your own life. In fact, that is where clarity often begins. Not in chasing, not in constant analysis, not in checking for signs every hour. Clarity often comes when your nervous system softens, when your mind stops forcing answers, and when you become steady enough to hold uncertainty without letting it consume you. Stay with me because this may be the part you needed most. Emotional maturity is not the absence of longing. It is the ability to carry longing without letting it rule you. It is learning how to let something matter without letting it break your center. And once you reach that place, everything begins to look different. If a reconnection ever comes, it may not arrive the way you imagined it in your quietest moments. It may not be polished. It may not be perfect. It may not sound like the speech your mind wrote 100 times. Real return, when it happens, is often awkward, human, hesitant, and incomplete. A person who comes back after distance is not the same person who left. Time reshapes people. Reflection reshapes people. Pain reshapes people. And the same is true for you. So, if there is ever another moment between you, it will not only be about old feelings. It will also be about who both of you became while apart. That matters more than fantasy admits. Because someone can return with sincerity and still carry confusion. They can miss you and still not fully understand themselves. They can care and still have limits. So do not romanticize reconnection as automatic resolution. Sometimes return is only return. Clarity is a separate thing. Truth is a separate thing. Readiness is a separate thing. And this is why your real task right now is not prediction. It is steadiness. It is becoming the kind of person who can meet whatever happens next without collapsing into fear. Whether they speak or stay silent, whether they move closer or remain far away, your inner ground must become stronger than the uncertainty. That strength is not coldness. It is peace. And peace is what keeps you from turning every delay into despair. You may be sensing unfinished emotional meaning because unfinished emotional meaning is exactly what this is. Your mind keeps trying to solve it because it hates open loops. Your heart keeps revisiting it because it still feels the weight of what was shared, what was awakened, and what was left hanging in the air. But not everything unfinished needs to be forced closed right now. Some things reveal themselves only after enough time has passed for the noise to settle. Some truths do not arrive through pressure. They arrive through space. Through patience, through the slow quieting of panic, through letting reality show itself instead of trying to drag it into the light before it is ready. And until then, the invitation is simple, though not easy. Breathe. Step back from the stories fear keeps writing for you. Stop treating silence as if it already contains the final verdict on your value. It does not. What this person does or does not do next cannot rewrite who you are. Their confusion is not your deficiency. Their delay is not your lack. Their silence is not proof that you were unimportant. Sometimes you touched something real in them. Sometimes that reality frightened them. Sometimes life complicated it. Sometimes timing fractured it. Sometimes the heart knows something before the mind can carry it. And when that happens, the connection can go quiet without truly becoming meaningless. So if you have been asking whether you mattered, let this settle inside you now. People are not usually haunted by what meant nothing. They are not quietly stirred by what left no imprint. They do not need to withdraw from what never touched them. The very intensity of the silence may tell you there was more depth here than words ever managed to explain. But now comes the part that turns pain into wisdom. You do not need to chase proof every day. You do not need to build your identity around being remembered. You do not need to hold your breath waiting for one message to save the story. If something is meant to return to the surface, it will do so in its own time, through its own opening, and in a form more human and imperfect than fantasy likes to imagine. Until then, your role is not to shrink into obsession. Your role is to keep becoming whole. Keep your heart open, but keep your center. Let the connection mean what it meant, but do not let it steal the life still happening around you. And if this message found you at the exact moment you needed it, maybe that is because some deeper part of you was ready to stop calling yourself forgotten, ready to stop turning uncertainty into self-blame, and ready to understand that silence can hold many things. Not all of them are endings. Not all of them are empty. And not all of them diminish what was real between two people who changed each other. What matters most now is this. You do not have to solve the entire story tonight. You do not have to know every hidden thought they carry. You do not have to force one final meaning onto something still moving under the surface. Let life breathe. Let time do some of the work your mind has been trying to do alone. If there is a future moment, it will come with its own truth. If there is no future moment, the meaning of what you lived is still real. It still shaped you. It still revealed parts of your heart, your strength, your fears, and your capacity to feel deeply. That alone is not wasted. That alone has value. So the next time their silence starts speaking too loudly in your head, remember this. Silence can be confusion, processing, fear, memory, hesitation, or emotional overload. It is not always rejection. It is not always forgetting. And it is definitely not always the full story. Hold that gently. Return to yourself. Let your peace grow stronger than your need to know. And if